I worry about Scheyer already, to be honest. I worried about him before Dariq Whitehead got hurt. And now we don't know when he's going to be available. And he's certainly one of their better ready-made freshmen, the guys that could probably impact right away if he was healthy. I love Derek Lively. Kyle Filipowski's talented. I just think they got too many young dudes for a rookie head coach who's going to have a absolute gauntlet of a schedule early, starting with the Champions Classic. You've got other big-time matchups that Duke has. So I worry about it. I think they could honestly – I thought about not ranking them in my preseason top 25. I have them about 14, but I debated, you know what, should they even be in the top 25 preseason with a new head coach and a bunch of freshmen and a couple of veterans that were pieces?
Yes, to answer your question, they should be in the preseason top 25 because in my mind, you're kind of projecting towards what they could be at the end of the year. And I think that if we're going to say that Duke is a top 15 team by the end of the year, RC, that's probably fair. But right now, as of this very moment, I think they're going to take some lumps early on in the season. Is that fair?
I think they're going to struggle out of the gate, and it's because they're young. I mean, we can say all we want, they're talented, but they're freshmen nonetheless. And the biggest thing is they've gotten away with that in the past, but there's no Paulo Banchero in this class. There's no Zion. There's no – I mean, you can go as far back, and Brandon Ingram was just a freakish athletic length guy, that you couldn't match up with, so there's not one of those guys in this class. And Derek Lively's number one player in the class. But again, he's more of a defender, rebounder, offensive thing he brings that'll come later in the year. So they're really young. This is as young as a Duke team that I can recall in quite some time.
You know what else they don't have? The refs. They're not going to have that either with K. No, but it's true. Again, it's true. They're not going to get calls. They've gotten calls for years, and deservedly so. They've had a Hall of Famer on the sideline. Now it's going to go where they're probably going to be fortunate to get calls.
I don't know if I would go that far, but I do think that the intimidation factor, maybe that's saying it too hard, but referees are humans, right? And I think that there is a presence with a guy like a Coach K or a guy like a Roy Williams or a guy like a John Calipari or Jim Boeheim it makes it harder to not give close calls to that team, if that makes sense. What I'm worried about, Jeff, is from the Almanac, you interviewed Jon Scheyer for it. He has a quote here. It says, "We can be a heck of a defensive team, and we have to hang our hat on that." To me, that is a huge red flag because the biggest concern I have with freshmen coming in is learning what is expected on the defensive end of the floor. And they're going to be doing that, RC, under a coach that has never run a team or run a program himself. If they are a team that's going to be relying on their defense early on, to me, that's a concern for a couple of reasons, not the least of which is, can you play Derek Lively and Kyle Filipowski together?
No. I don't think you can. I think they're going to – if it is, he's going to play zone. What we know, John, is Scheyer's going to do is he's not afraid to change things. I mean, I didn't believe he'd go outside the Duke family and add to his staff. Yeah. I thought he'd bring in, maybe some other veteran guys on his staff. He didn't. I respect that. I think he'll struggle early because it's just the nature of the business with his team. Everyone else is getting old, and they're just really, really young. So I don't care who's coaching this team, K or not. They're going to struggle out of the gate because they're really, really young, because they're at the mercy of the class. I mean, if we would have fast forward this and this was next year, we wouldn't have had this conversation because they'd have two players. We're like, hey, that's the number one, number two pick in the draft. They're done. It's just different. We go back a year ago. We knew Paulo was going to be top two, one or two in the draft. They don't have that guy. No one's sitting here saying Dariq Whitehead is going to be the number one pick in the draft next year. They're just at the mercy of these incoming guys.
I love Lively, but Lively is not a scorer.
No,
he's a guy that honestly, if you're going to get 10 and 10 out of, and maybe 2.5, 3 blocks, that's probably a legitimate hope for Jon Scheyer and the staff. Lively's not a guy, again, for those people who haven't seen him, he is long. He runs like a guard. He can finish in transition. He can make an occasional three. And Filipowski's built the same. You just saw him, RC, right? You saw them recently.
Yeah.
They have similar body builds. They're both super long. And Filipowski, if he's not making shots, I don't know what he's doing.
Here's my biggest concern with them defensively is the value for Derek Lively long-term is his ability to be a guy that can protect the rim, while also being able to do different things in ball screen coverages, right? Whether it's playing drop, whether it's even at certain times switching out onto the point guards. The hardest thing to do with big guys is to teach them how to do all of these different reads and have all of these different coverages on the defensive end of the floor in ball screen actions. And he's going to be the anchor of your defense as a freshman. That's a very difficult thing to do. I do want to turn this a little bit because we are going to be joined by Jeremy Roach here in a second. RC, you are a DMV guy. You've seen him play. I don't know if you guys recruited him, but I'm sure that you were kind of, you knew who he was coming through the high school ranks. By the end of last season, he was playing some really good basketball. I think you can make the argument they don't win a couple different tournament games if it's not for Jeremy Roach making plays down the stretch. What do you think should be a realistic expectation for what he can provide this season?
That's the $1 million question. Now, what can he provide? I think he has to play high level point guard play at the beginning of the season because those guys are going to need his help. Well, of course, they're going to need his leadership because he's the only returning guy. But to get lively going, he has to play, get in the paint, throw lobs. He has to be the facilitator. And let's be honest, that's something he hasn't had full-time responsibility since he's been at Duke. Starting out the year last year, Wendell Moore was the point guard. Right. He was actually third on the team last year in assists. So we're saying now we're going to put the ball in his hands. Now, he's done that in the past. He has not done that consistently at this level, and there's no help for him. I mean, he's dealing with
the difference. Yeah, that's the difference. Now you're relying on Jeremy Roach. Before, whatever he gave you was a bonus.
Yeah.
Big difference.
Yeah. All right, let's get into the interview now with Jeremy Roach. One thing I've realized, Goodman, about talking with guys from the DMV is they somehow always find a way to mention in a conversation that they're from the DMV. So, RC, I'm going to give this one to you. You got about 30 seconds, and we'll move on to UNC. Best lineup for Duke this season, best five, assuming Whitehead is healthy and assuming Tyrese Proctor kind of makes that step to be, not just a reclass freshman. What's their best five?
Going off of what Coach said, I think the best lineup defensively for them, because they're going to struggle some offensively, is going to be Roach. I think it'll be Jacobson, Derek Whitehead.
Jacobson, he combined the names.
Yeah.
Nice job.
Grandison, I'm sorry, Grandison. I said Jacobson. You're right, Grandison. I'm thinking of. I got to go with Mark Mitchell at the 4. I know he's coming in as a freshman. He doesn't have the high, he has a reputation, but again, he's not as highly ranked as Lively and Philip House.
Because he was hurt. He was hurt on the AU circuit. That's why.
But having watched him, he's going to give them a defensive versatility. He's going to be able to switch 1 through 4, sometimes 5, and obviously Lively patrolling the paint. And he's going to be able to switch some with drop coverage. He's athletic enough. He can do whatever they want. That'll be their best lineup. When they go to the bench, they'll have to change them. I think they got to implement zone some this year.
Yep. It'll be interesting because a lot of those pieces are very, very young. I mentioned Proctor. He is a reclassified freshman, and Whitehead missed a lot of the preseason with the foot, ankle, something or other. Yeah.
Hey, what do you think of Proctor before we move on quickly, Rob? What do you think of Proctor?
I really like him. He can really play, really shoots it. He's thin. You can pressure him a little bit, probably speed him up. That'll come in time. Really shoots the mess out. He shoots the crap out of it. He can really stroke it. Really stroke
it. So he'll play. They're saying he's going to play a lot.
He's going to play. He's going to play a lot. He'll play a lot. Great size. He'll play a lot.
It's early season Field of 68 after dark when RC is hitting us with shooting the crap out of it. So we'll get you into midseason form here soon enough, RC. All right, I want to talk about North Carolina. It's amazing that we've gone 15 minutes into the show and we haven't gotten to them yet. They are the preseason number 1 team according to the AP. They are the preseason number 2 team according to the Almanac. Goodman, I'm going to throw this to you first.